Hare Krishna, Mother CITI-SAKTI. Please accept my humble
Hare
obeisances.
Krishna Prabhu. Please
Jai.
accept mine.
Jai. All glories to Gurudev, all glories to Sri Prabhupada. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me back.
Yes. Uh, my brother is connecting us to YouTube. Okay, he did. Okay, good. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Jagat Guru Sri Prabhupada, all glories to Gurudev, all glories to Samud Vaishnava devotees. Devotees, we thank you all for being here as usual. We have Her Grace Mother CITI-SAKTI Devi, who will be speaking to us from the Srimad Bhagavatam today. Of course, Mother CITI-SAKTI needs no introduction. She is my sister, and she's been like a raindrop in the desert. She's been hiding from us for quite a long time. I say hiding, but not hiding. Really, she's been quite busy, but somehow today she's here with us. Mother CITI-SAKTI, thank you so much for being here. And without further ado, we may put the verse on the screen and then you take it over from here.
Sure, no problem. Hare
Okay,
Krishna, everybody.
Thank you
Please
so
accept
much.
my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Gurudev. Would you like me to share screen?
Yes,
Okay,
I'll do that.
I was just thinking, let's start with Mangalarchanam, and then we can go
Sure.
to the verse. So if you know it, please at home do join in. Om Agyan Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamaya Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yatapadakkamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Advaitam Sarvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padhan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubheva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadigora Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we're going to be reading from the second canto, 9th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is verse 28. So I'm just going to share my screen with you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hridasya Magha Sankalpa Urnanabhiryathodnute Tatha Tad Vishayam Dehi Manisham Mai Madhavaha. Translation: O Master of all energies, please tell me philosophically all about them. You play like a spider that covers itself by its own energy, and your determination is infallible. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. By the inconceivable energy of the Lord, every creative element has its own potencies, known as the potency of the element, potency of knowledge, and potency of different actions and reactions. By a combination of such potencies of the Lord, there is the manifestation of creation, maintenance, and annihilation in due course of time, and by different agents like Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwar. Brahma creates, Vishnu maintains, and Lord Shiva destroys. But all such agents and creative energies are emanations from the Lord. And as such, there is nothing except the Lord, or the one supreme source of different diversities. The exact example is the spider and the spider's web. The web is created by the spider and it is maintained by the spider. But as soon as the spider likes, the whole thing is wound up within the spider. The spider is covered within the web. If an insignificant spider is so powerful as to act according to its will, why can't the Supreme Being act by his supreme will in the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the cosmic manifestations? By the grace of the Lord, a devotee like Brahma, or one in his chain of disciplic succession, can understand the almighty personality of Godhead eternally engaged in his transcendental pastimes in the region of different energies. So I'm going to give a very quick summary what's happened preceding this, because if you take this verse on its own, it's a question, and a question is easier to understand once we understand clearly what the context of the question is. So this question is being asked by Lord Brahma to Lord Vishnu. So Brahma has, this is talking about happens right at the start of creation. So Brahma has taken birth from the lotus flower of that's growing from the navel of Garbhodaksha Vishnu. And when Brahma is born, there's nothing around him. Nothing's been created. And he's bewildered. And he searches out, where have I come from? Who have I come from? Who's my mother? Who's my father? You know, and he starts to search. So he swims down the stem of the lotus flower. He emerges, finds nothing. But he hears two syllables, tapa, or penance, or austerity. And he hears this twice. He hears this tapa twice. And within him, he knows, I'm going to follow this instruction. So for 1,000 celestial years, so demigod years, which in our years is innumerable. We would have had millions of births in that time. He meditates. And he meditates and comes to a point, because of his austerities, because of his penances, where the Vaikuntha planets, so the Vaikuntha planets, where the residents of Vaikuntha, who have four arms, wear golden clothing, and have a light sky bluish complexion, and are worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his Narayan form, all of this manifests. And the four-armed form of the Lord comes to speak to Brahma. Now, when, and it's explained earlier on in this chapter that Brahma's achieved the perfection of having personal darshan of the Lord as a result of his penance. So when Brahma is met by the Lord offers him so many different things. Now, when we want to really see someone, we go through a big effort, don't we? If we really, really want to see someone, we go through a big effort. And that effort means that even when we encounter that person, there's such an anticipation, especially if you have to wait to meet someone. There's such an anticipation, there's such an eagerness. And Brahma's eager. He's, of course, eager because the Lord is just so beautiful. And once we lay eyes on the Lord, our heart is so completely satisfied. And we are so mesmerized that nothing else is really very important. And every devotee we read about who encounters the Lord face to face is stunned. Okay, they're stunned. But it's kind of like being starstruck. Okay. However, along with that starstruck feeling, Brahma also has this inquisitiveness. I want to know, I want to understand you. Right? Imagine you've been waiting a long time to meet someone. You want to understand them, because when someone's that wonderful, how is it that you are so wonderful? These are really the questions that Brahma's asking. The verse before this verse, and a couple more. Brahma basically is really asking the inconceivable Lord, how can you, you're inconceivable, but I want to understand your inconceivability. Can you explain it to me? And so he's eager, he's enthusiastic, he's excited. He knows the Lord's offered him some sort of boon and is willing to give him whatever he wants. But before he gets to all of that, he really wants to understand this very wonderful personality who's standing in front of him. And so this question he asks him, "O master of all energies, please tell me philosophically all about them. You play like a spider that covers itself by its own energy, and your determination is infallible." Now, to make a bit more sense of this, the verse before this was, or the question he asked him before this was, "And please inform me how you, by yourself, manifest different energies for annihilation, generation, acceptance, and maintenance by combination and permutation." Why is he asking these questions in particular? Brahma, in the course of his penance, he would have realized many, many things on the journey to having personal darshan of the Lord. And in that duration of 1,000 celestial years, the inspiration to create and the inspiration to create as an instrument or on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are part of the realizations that he had. So in realizing those things, he also realizes actually, ultimately, it's Krishna who's doing everything, right? It's actually the Supreme Personality of God doing everything. I'm just going to be an instrument, but I really want to be this instrument. It's the same realization Arjun has in his conversation with Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, that yes, he's asking me to fight, but ultimately it's him who's doing everything, because Krishna is the one who shows Arjun, like, all these people on the battlefield, they're already dead. Their time's come. Okay, so Brahma is really trying to understand from the Lord that, yes, I'm going to be your instrument, and I would love to be empowered in your service to dedicate my life to you and this particular energy to you. Use it in your service. But how? But why? Everything's you. Everything that happens is caused by you. You know, he says, he actually talks about how the Lord's determination is fixed in, that means that his determination, which means being fixed in purpose, is infallible, free of mistakes. Okay, so everything's going to happen anyway, because whatever you want to happen happens, because your determination is fixed, and you never make mistakes. So it's everything's going on as it is, because you have these different, you know, ways in which you combine your energies, the way you arrange them, the proportions you use them in. And then when you put all of those different potencies with time, you're also time. And your agents, you are also the agents, right? Earlier on in the chapter, Prabhupada says that Atma Tattva, so the truth or knowledge about the soul, the individual soul, actually includes God and us, includes Jiva and the Lord, because the Lord is Paramatma, the supreme soul, the supreme individual, and we are Atma, okay? So what Brahma is reflecting on is, in all of this, everything I've been praying, worshipping, meditating on, has led me to this conclusion that everything is you. And although I'm going to do this service on your behalf of creation, I want to understand you better by maybe, first of all, can you explain to me how it is that you are the cause of the energy, you are the energy, you're the potency of the energy, you're the action of the energy, you're the effect of the energy, all of it, and the source. You are everything. And you are the time, the transformer of all energy. And you are also the different individuals who is executing everything. So it's all you. Can you just explain to me how that works? You know, even if you look at this equation in science, right? In physics particularly, or those who study energetic principles, E equals mc squared, right? Energy is mass times the speed of light squared. We want to understand. We want to understand, how does that work? I see it's amazing, but how does it work? So Brahma's like, you're so amazing. And how does that work? Can you explain it to me? So this is, Srila Prabhupada is, so he, actually, before we get on to Srila Prabhupada, Brahma's likening it to the spider. Now, most of the time, most people find spiders eerie and creepy, but they have been brought to a transcendental position by this question, because they've been likened to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, if you do look at a spider, when a spider creates the web, the spider can hide itself in the web. It can retract the web whenever it wants. It can repair the web whenever it wants. I mean, in fact, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, spiders' webs are one of the strongest materials in the world. You know, so they have a very, very strong tensile strength. So he brought the spider to this transcendental position. Prabhupada's reflecting on, yeah, if a spider can do all this, then this is very easy for God to be the agent, the source, the cause and the effect, just by changing the arrangement and the proportions and the order of these different energies. He can lead to creation, maintenance, or destruction, or anything else for that matter. And this very last paragraph of the purport is really, I feel like in this particular verse, what really stood out to me. By the grace of the Lord, a devotee like Brahma, or one in his chain of disciplic succession, can understand the almighty personality of Godhead eternally engaged in his transcendental pastimes in the region of different energies. We can receive the same answers that Brahma got from the Lord by being connected with devotion and chastity to the knowledge that descends from Lord Brahma. I mean, we are in the Brahma Sampradaya. Okay, all our predecessors descend from the Brahma Sampradaya. So this knowledge is passed to Brahma, and then Brahma passes on to his children, and so on and so forth. Actually, the knowledge we have right now, the head spiritual master of our Sampradaya is Lord Brahma. And if we follow our Siddhanta correctly, if we follow the instructions of the spiritual master correctly, if we follow our founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, with sincerity, then this same answer to Brahma's inquiry of how is it, you know, Prabhupada's pointing out how to see the Lord everywhere in his eternal transcendental pastimes through his energies. Now, if you look throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Lord gives many different ways to see him everywhere. This is one. This is one way that Brahma is inquiring about, which is, and one of many, which is being able to see the Lord in his potencies of creation, maintenance, and destruction. For most people, when they think about creation, maintenance, and destruction, they think about what we're taught in GCSE Hinduism in England, which is there's three Murti, you know, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and they're the three aspects of God, and this is the be-all and end-all of who God is. Now, the Bhakti texts go beyond that, and this is what it's explaining here, that this one particular model is just one way of seeing the Lord everywhere, because even this Trimurti comes from one person. Even these three aspects, they come from one person. Other examples, we have the Virat Rup, seeing the Lord everywhere by the analogy or the comparison of different parts of the universe resembling different parts of the Lord's body. We also have another way of seeing the Lord everywhere as seeing the Lord as Paramatma, the supreme soul or the super soul, in every living entity's heart, and beyond that, in every atom and molecule. Okay, he's in every atom and molecule. And then in this path of Bhakti Yoga, the Lord Brahma is our head of our sampradaya, right? The head spiritual master. This process of Bhakti Yoga, we actually see the Lord's personal hand in every individual occurrence that happens to us and in every individual that we encounter. And how do we see that? How do we see this personal touch of the Lord in every aspect of our life? As our personal individual relationship with Krishna becomes more and more manifest, and Krishna's individual relationship with us, so who he is to us, not just who am I to you, but Krishna, who are you to me? As that becomes more and more manifest, then it doesn't matter whether we are seeing him in his Virat Rup, whether we are seeing him in his potencies of creation, destruction, or maintenance, or if we're seeing him as Paramatma. but we see him, the person. There's a difference between seeing the effects of a person and the person themselves, right? And this is the difference between bhakti and impersonalism, is that we in bhakti are recovering our loving relationship with God, not a philosophical one. Now, it's important to distinguish the two, because in this question, Brahma asks the Lord to explain philosophically. And this is important because philosophically requires some intellectual understanding. And that intellectual understanding, or that philosophical understanding, balances out the emotional or the relational understanding, so it doesn't become over familiarity, right? Prabhupada often uses this phrase that he talks about how our relational side is expressed in culture, right? That where there's philosophy and no culture, it's just dry speculation. There's no practice, no application, no relationship. Where there's culture, there's lots of relationship and practice and social experiences, but no philosophy, you just end up with sentimentality. So Brahma wants to understand, first of all, philosophically, before he gets into application and relation. And this is important. That's why we have all these different stages and aspects in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna gives us different ways to see him. So when we get very close, we have already understood the value of who we are coming face to face with. And it's what's very interesting is that, yes, Brahma is very, very eager to inquire from the Lord. Like I said, I use the phrase, he's starstruck. And in him being starstruck, he wants to also understand how the Lord operates. And if this is my only conversation that I'm going to have with the Lord, I just want to understand him so I can see him more in everything. So I never forget him. When I start taking this service of creation, I don't want to start thinking that I am the cause and effect of all that I do, right? Which is what we grapple with even in our devotional service. We know we're doing a service on behalf of the Lord. We may even take up a service as an offering to the Lord, but we are all vulnerable to getting trapped into seeing ourselves as the cause and the cause of the effect. And the agent, when it's very clear here that he's actually Krishna's everything and everywhere. So what is it? As well as being eager and enthusiastic to hear, there's this one element of Brahma that we, in this disciplic succession descending from Brahma, would have been advised and would be behooved to all of us to, is inquire submissively. Inquire. So this is what Brahma is doing. He's not just eager, but he is submissive. He wants to hear eagerly, but he also wants to accept it. This is what submission means. So he's not asking a question as if, I already know the answer, I'm just asking you for the benefit of everybody else who's going to read this or hear about this. He's asking because I want to know for myself. I don't want to get distracted in my service and start to get puffed up that I am the creator and I am the be-all and the end-all. I don't want to forget you. So I want to understand very clearly how you are everything. And you sometimes, it seems as if you're not even there. You are everything, doing everything, and yet you let me feel like I'm the creator. How can I make sure that I remember you? So this mood of inquiring submissively and eagerly, this really stood out to me in this last bit of the last paragraph of Srila Prabhupada's purport, where he talks about how we can understand the personality of Godhead, eternally engaged in his past transcendental pastimes, in his different energies, by following Lord Brahma, or being connected in that disciplic succession. And the secret is this submissive inquiry. You know, in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada explains that whenever the Lord is being spoken about, one of the most powerful elements which determines what manifests, there's obviously the obvious, the quality of the qualification of the speaker. He says one of the most important is actually the qualification of the listener. And anybody here who's ever given any kind of class, you'll know, especially when it comes to sharing anything to do with the Supreme Personality of Godhead or Guru Tattva, anything related to spiritual subject matters, you'll find that things come out of your mouth. You'll hear things that you needed to hear, that you didn't know you knew, okay, or that have come from a place deeper than the intellect. And you probably would have also experienced that sometimes they come out not because there's any qualification on the side of the speaker, but there's somebody sitting in the room who's so receptive to hearing. It's like the Lord bypasses our inadequacies and reaches out to that person directly because that person wants to hear so much. So we should never underestimate this quality of being able to inquire with submission. That means eagerness and willingness to accept. Because one can even submissively argue. What does that mean? To submissively argue. When we submissively argue, and what does argument mean? Normally people will say, I argue is back and forth where there's a disagreement. But one can disagree submissively, as in the disagreement actually isn't an absolute thing. I'm disagreeing with you forever. I'm disagreeing right now, but I want to hear the truth. So I'm very happy to throw my disagreement in the bin and, wave my white flag. I just need some convincing. So this is more like a submissive dialogue, just like Arjun had with Krishna. One might say some of Arjun's questions to Krishna were challenging, right? When Krishna says to him, both you and I, no, when he says, oh, I've spoken this philosophy previously to the sun god. And Arjun's like, well, how could you? He's older than you. And then Krishna responds, well, both you and I have had many, many births. You've forgotten all of them. I remember all of them. So this dialogue, someone could say, well, hang on a minute. He doesn't sound very submissive, but he is, because his attitude is one of acceptance and eagerness. Does that make sense? Submissiveness doesn't exclude inquiry. Submissiveness doesn't exclude doubt. And Prabhupada would often say doubting is a sign of intelligence. So in this particular question, there's quite a few things highlighted. One is that Krishna is the beginning and end of everything, and everything comes from him. Everyone comes from him. And yet he maintains his individuality. He has no work to do. And equally, we also maintain our individuality, all because of Krishna's unique, infallible determination, okay, being fixed in purpose without making any mistakes, creating a result of each of us being unique in our individuality. And with our individuality and his individuality, he can be the cause, the effect, the agent, the time, all the elements, and still be separate from us. And the element of Bhakti Yoga that says that this relationship between the individual and the whole is at its peak when it is a relationship of love. Not philosophy, love. Because philosophy is exciting to a point, but unless we live philosophy, then no relationship manifests from that philosophy. And so this is the difference between impersonalism and personalism. That with personalism, we are two individuals, because the whole is also an individual. He is an individual. That individual, that super soul, okay, our super friend, Krishna, and us, when it's united in relationship, that is the most pleasurable type of understanding, of seeing the Lord in his transcendental pastime everywhere, because it's personal and unique. Whereas when we understand philosophically, it is a preliminary way to approach all of these things. However, whichever way we're inquiring, that submission needs to be there. So to understand the Lord, one needs to be submissive in their inquiry, just like Lord Brahma was. So whenever we ask a question, if we feel like we haven't got the answer we wanted, I often find it easy. Or when I say answer we wanted, it's not so much we want the answer to be a particular thing. What I mean by that is if we ask a question and we feel the answer isn't satisfying, I often find it helpful to reflect on, did I actually ask the question and be willing to hear the answer submissively? Or how invested was I going in with asking a question, but already having some idea of what I think the answer is? Because the minute we have an idea that I know what the answer is going to be, or I already understand this much, we are going in with a bowl half full, which means the other person can only fill the half that's empty, right? So submissive inquiry means I'm going in with an empty bowl. Can you please fill it completely? I haven't got a clue what I'm talking about. So I find this a really helpful reflection on when I ask a question and I feel like the answer hasn't been satisfactory, rather than thinking, oh, this other person doesn't know. I ask myself, have I asked and listened in a submissive manner? Because what this allows me to do, then later on, I can hear the answer again or reflect on the question again. And as my bowl becomes more empty, there's more space to fill it up. So yeah, this verse is not a verse which has a lot of information in the purport or in the actual verse itself. It's not even a very long purport. There's no stories, there's no pastimes. But I feel like this particular question of Lord Brahma's says so much about the mood of inquiring and the mood of a sadhaka, that the inquiry is not just submissive, but Brahma's submission was in the pursuit of being of service. It wasn't just an ordinary, I want to understand you because you're so cool. I also want to understand you so I can serve you better. Because if you look at the questions that came before this and will continue, and Lord Brahma's actions after he finishes hearing from the Lord, they all indicate that his penance, his inquiry, were all in the pursuit of being able to be an instrument of the Lord. So this is the secret to Krishna consciousness. Then everything that we do, everything that we think, every question we ask, every doubt we have, every mistake we make, have we either carried it out or reflected on it in a way that is facilitated by a submissive inquiry of, is this going to improve or destroy my relationship with the Lord? I'm going to leave it there and open up to you for your comments and questions and corrections or anything else you might want to say. It is a short purport and a short verse, so there's lots of a room for discussion. And I'll hand over to you, Sahadev Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mother CITI-SAKTI. Dear devotees, if anyone may have questions, realizations, comments, you would want to unmute and ask. All right, Krishna Prabhu, please unmute.
Krishna Mother,
My
my question is on the costs. Because of your lecture, you mentioned devotional chastity. I would like to understand, how do we have develop devotional chastity? What does it mean? Does it mean, because we see today in devotional service, many people are practicing so many things that are not only in Prabhupada or in ISKCON. So where does devotional chastity comes in when things like this are going on in the movement? You are muted, I think. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now I can hear you.
Krishna Prabhu, I was saying that you have a very keen ear. You're a very good listener. Yes, I mentioned this word chastity. I wasn't sure how many people would pick up on it. So chastity in devotional service. Chastity has so many different, it's very multifaceted. Most people, when we think about chastity, we think about loyalty, right? And Bhaktivedanta Maharaj would often talk about chastity to Srila Prabhupada, chastity to the process. And, you know, one thing I've seen, if you look at chastity relationally, loyalty to the people we're connected to, being chaste to them, being devoted to them, happens very easily, whether it's a process or a person, where we feel safe. And we tend to become unchaste when we don't feel safe. Now, there can be many reasons that have led someone to not feel safe. More often than not, people feel unsafe because they haven't really understood what, or have realistic expectations. Sometimes we may feel unsafe because we're carrying things from the past, which mean that actually we carry that sense of feeling threatened with us wherever we go. And we can never stay somewhere for too long because we're just so concerned about getting hurt or concerned about failing. Sometimes, unfortunately, people may struggle with being chaste because, unfortunately, there may be good reason, and our trust may have genuinely been broken. You know, we see this very much in situations where, in communities where there's been issues of exploitation or abuse, people's trust has been broken. And, you know, although studies show this, studies actually back this up, that when people are exploited and manipulated in secular society, they tend to turn to God. But when they are manipulated or abused or exploited in a community of spiritualists or in a religious community by religious people, particularly religious leaders, they have no one to turn to because it's the very representative of God who's exploited them. So chastity can be compromised for many reasons. Now, something else Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj would talk about is how religion is a vehicle for spirituality, and we want to find a genuine vehicle. But he also says that we want to follow something genuinely. So chastity and sincerity and being genuine and authentic in ourselves go hand in hand. So we each have to be careful that if we find ourselves thinking that, oh, the answers to everything are not with Krishna, the answers to everything are not in his words, the answers to everything are not in the words of the spiritual master, then we really should be stopping and taking stock about, why am I feeling like this? Am I carrying mistrust from earlier in my life and just bringing it into the devotional process? Have I not read enough? Have I not heard enough? And that's also quite common. You know, the first two are more common than the exploitation. We hear and talk about exploitation because, first of all, it should be talked about, but it's also usually extreme. But we vocalize it. But people don't vocalize. We don't talk about it enough. The things we carry from before that skew our vision of whether we should be loyal or not, right? And equally, we don't necessarily talk about that I might be being unchaste because I haven't actually bothered to look whether there's answers to these questions in Shastra, because actually it's easier for me to find on Instagram or on YouTube or Google by somebody from another group, right? Do you see what I mean? Like simple answers, like answers to life's questions, practical day-to-day questions. You know, in my work, people are often coming to me, you know, as a psychiatrist, asking about things that will help their mind be more peaceful, help them feel more happy, help them feel more healthy psychologically. You know, maybe they have serious illnesses like schizophrenia or manic depression. So they want this, but those answers actually are also there in the process, in Shastra. And Shastra doesn't, and that's not me saying, oh, forget it, you don't need to ever see a doctor again. What I'm saying is you can get help from outside, at the same time remain chaste to the process of devotion. It's not either this or that. Chastity means that I know where my compass is and which compass I follow. However, the Lord can come through anyone and everything. And if the compass, and in order to do my service, and in order to be chaste to this compass, I need to dip into something else. That doesn't mean that that something else replaces my devotional process or my relationship with the Lord. It's like the secondary should never replace the primary, even if right now it feels like the secondary is sorting out more things for us. It's if I give you a much clearer analogy, it's like when you have a disease, you have let's talk about an infection. Most people can't see the bacteria that are causing the infection. They're tiny, okay? What they feel and what they see is the symptom. So they feel pain, okay? They may feel heat, like the temperature might go up, and they may see pus or they may see inflammation. Those are the things. Can you treat? Can I have some pills to get rid of the pain, to bring my temperature down? Okay, here's your antibiotics, because actually what we need to do is kill the bug. Okay, the secondary is treating your symptoms, but if I don't treat your symptoms, you're not going to take the antibiotic because you'll be in too much pain and your fever will be up. So we treat both the symptoms and the cause. So in our process of devotional service, even if we have to dip outside of to get some other knowledge to support our devotional life, that means we might be doing something for symptom control, but that doesn't mean that the painkiller and the anti-inflammatory are going to do the same job as the antibiotic, the devotional service. So yeah, I think if there's anything, if I say it in a sentence, take away from my answer is that as we look to other things to help us in our devotional life, be careful not to make them our primary, because they're only answering a certain portion, whereas devotional life and devotional knowledge is absolute truth. It stands true in all time, in all circumstances, for all people, in all places, whereas everything else is a relative truth. So you use it as you need to, especially if it's in the pursuit of devotional service, and then, be grateful. Thank you for your time. Thank it for its time with you, and park it when you no longer need it, rather than it becoming a solution for everything.
Thank you. My second question and last is, in this issue of devotional chastity, you mentioned we can receive the same instruction like Brahma received from Krishna. But Brahma, we heard, was performing so much austerity before he was able to get whatever knowledge he got from Krishna to create. We are not performing austerity like Brahma, so how can we receive the same thing like Brahma?
So Brahma's spiritual master was the Lord himself. He said tapa, right? Twice to him. You perform your penances. And Brahma, the body he has, the time he appeared, tapa or penance was performed in a particular way. And so Brahma did this for 1,000 celestial years. We may struggle for 10 minutes to meditate silently, okay? Brahma did it for 1,000 celestial years. So the spiritual master sets what a penance is. Okay, what is the standard of, what is austerity for you? And for us, our austerity is to chant the holy names with no hard and fast rules. That's our only austerity. That's our only sacrifice. If we can do other things, for example, our principles of freedom, no intoxicants, no gambling or cheating, no illicit sex, etc. Our diet is vegetarian, etc. No meat, fish, or eggs. All of these things, these principles of freedom, they help support this. But actually, our tapa for this age is no hard and fast rules, just chant the name of the Lord. And it's with this penance, with this sacrifice, that the Lord will be revealed in the heart and from within and from without. And the same, so Brahma got two things. One is darshan of the Lord, but also the potency to do his service on behalf of the Lord. And we often struggle in our services on behalf of the Lord because we get mixed up with our own personal desires. But as we chant, as we engage in our tapa, those personal desires that are separate from the pleasure of the Lord get purified, and then we become a pure instrument for the Lord.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Krishna. I think Navakishore, he's had his hand.
Please, you may unmute Navakishore.
You're on mute, Nava. Can't hear you.
There we go. Hare Krishna, CITI-SAKTI Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Wonderful to hear from you. The question I have is, when you talked about primary and secondary and devotional chastity, there's something that I've been kind of reflecting on. I had a conversation with a friend who I met who was raised in a very traditional, hardcore Christian environment, and his dad was like, if it's not in the Bible, it's not true. And so, like, it's interesting, like, the modern context, his conception of religion is that if you don't accept all of it, and you're not a real devotee. You can't just, like, half chicken philosophy of Bhaktisiddhanta mentioned, like, you can't just do this part is true, this part isn't true. At the same time, we have, like, our intelligence, like, we see the world in a certain ways. Obviously, our senses are imperfect. But there's certain things that sometimes when we come across these scriptural statements, we know from our personal experience that we just don't feel like it's true or there's validity to it. And there might be interesting ways to explain it. And I'm trying to be concise. I'm working on that. But there was a call with Vaishnavis where they talked about the statement, women are less intelligent. I know Gurudev has an answer, but when they specifically asked, there was a Prabhupada disciple, different devotees, female devotees, and when they're asked specifically, what do you think about this phrase? They said, I don't think it's true. And I just feel like in our being intelligent, devotional people, what space is there to have that perspective on scripture?
Thank you. Very good question. All of it's true. Now, I'm going to say it might be a bit controversial, so hear me out. All of it's true, and we accept all of it to be true. But not all of it is relevant to us all the time. Because we have got very diverse, very mature scripture that doesn't talk about just now. It also talks about the past and the future. Okay? Our scriptures deal with the absolute truth, but also many relative truths, many secondary things, because it talks about different places. Even Prabhupada himself says, don't see the Bhagavatam in chronological order. The pastimes spoken about in the Bhagavatam are not all even from the same universe, let alone the same place. Okay, let alone the same planetary system. They're not even spoken about in order. So don't get caught up in time and place, because time and space, no one can control. We can work around time and space, but we can't control it. As for accepting all of it, you can accept something, but it may not necessarily be relevant. So, for example, there are many statements in Shastra which are absolutely true for the demigods. They're absolutely 100% fact, but it's not relevant to me because I'm not in a demigod body right now. And it's interesting, the way Prabhupada answers the statement, that question, women are less intelligent, he answers it exactly this way in terms of whether it's relevant or not. Someone asks him, Swamiji, is it true that women are less intelligent? And Prabhupada says, if you think you're a woman, then yes. Does that make sense? It's showing that, yes, there's, to some degree, there's a truth in this, but if you accept it as that stops, it's not relevant because you're not a woman. You're a Vaishnavi. Does that make sense? It's the mentality with which you identify with. Which identity do you identify with? So, for example, I'll give you a really clear one. If you're a policeman and you identify as a policeman all the time, whether you're in uniform or out of uniform, you're going to think you can take down any criminal at any time. Now, if you're off duty and you do it, and forgive me if any of you are police people and I've got the rules wrong, I may have the rules wrong and it may be different in different countries. If in plain clothes, when you're off duty, you do something that you would ordinarily do as a policeman and be fine with it, you're still going to go to, there might be repercussions because the protection is no longer relevant. Equally, there may be some things that you can do whether you're in plain clothes or on duty because the civilian law is irrelevant to you because your primary duty is to protect everybody else. So as Vaishnavas, if we identify as a Vaishnava, I'm a servant of the Lord first, then whatever the limitations or the strengths of the particular body we have, they do not carry as much relevance or strength or impact on us. So actually it doesn't mean anything whether women are less intelligent or more intelligent, or sometimes less intelligent or sometimes more intelligent. Because in Shastra it also says women are intelligent. In fact, Krishna talks about of women intelligence and memory. He says that in the Bhagavad Gita. So there's so many different statements. If we, sometimes we grab a statement like a dog with a bone and we don't let go of it. Right. And we just grapple with it until our teeth are falling out. So I think absolutely we can accept everything in Shastra to be fact, but we have to look at, is this relevant to me? How much does this apply to me? And much of that depends on how much do I identify with the secondary aspects of myself. And this whole male-female thing, it actually is at base level, it's a very social construct, which is in flux, which is become blown out of proportion because people have rooted it based on genetics, genitalia, and social roles. Actually, if you look at the mind and you look at the soul, they have both masculine and femininity because they're whole, right? We're actually androgynous. If you look at lateral hemispheric lateralization, which is right brain is female, left brain is masculine qualities, everybody's got a right brain and left brain. In the healthiest, most balanced people, their right brain and left brain works in cooperation, in synergy, and they have access to the qualities of masculinity and femininity in equal measure at their fingertips all of the time. The people who have the most struggle have a gender war going on within themselves, and so it manifests externally as well. The whole man-woman thing is the most crude sense of identification in this world. we also have race and color. Those are also quite crude, but they're so base level. And if we design our lives around base level constructs, there's always going to be problems. But more sophisticated aspect of ourself is mind, the psychology, subtle body, and the most is our spiritual identity, which we know is ultimately Prakriti. Okay, so, and ultimately it's nothing to do with, again, genitalia, genetics, or social roles. So just coming back to that question of yours, how much should we accept as fact? It can all be fact. It's just a question of whether it's relevant.
That makes sense. I have a follow-up question, but I want to be respectful to other devotees who, oh, it looks like there's a Hare Krishna Africa question. So I can ask you later.
If it's a follow-up,
If it's a follow-up, then you may.
Yeah, do it. Otherwise we'll lose the rhythm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
go ahead. Okay, sure, Prabhu.
This concept of identifying ourselves as spirit soul, I found it challenging because if it's so much a tendency that we identify with our bodies, and when we say that we're spirit soul and we're not these bodies, it almost seems like an impersonal statement. And I'll say this why is because, like, I don't have realization of what my Siddha Swarup is, with Krishna. And the only way I've kind of figured out in my mind how that makes sense is that if I accept my identity as a Hare Krishna within the community as a disciple, like, because that's the only physical spiritual reality that I take on.
I hear
So
you.
I'm wondering how you do it, because I think part of it is language. Like, I went to pickleball and I said, oh, we're all Indians here. And then I realized, like, oh, technically, I should be identifying that we're humans, we're spirit souls. But I was saying that, but I'm just curious your technology with that.
That's a really good question. So how do we make the transition, or what's that intermediary relational space between socially identifying with the community of devotees, having our Siddha Swarup? What's the bridge in between? Prabhupada talks about how our service allows us to remember that, and before we find out exactly what our relationship is with Krishna, we definitely, all of us already have a relationship, if we choose to accept it, as Krishna's friend and dear servant. Okay, dear friend and servant. He's friendly to us. We're friendly to him. In our reading, in our hearing, and what helps me is in my reading, my hearing, in my service, if I'm thinking about, okay, I'm doing this for you. He's friendly, and I'm offering this to somebody who's friendly towards me and who has my back, and I'm offering it in a friendly manner. I have a relationship then, which is independent of who am I exactly to you? What's my eternal service? So even when that's not there, then one is able to engage in this mood of I have a relationship with Krishna, because ultimately the institution, at some point, it's inevitable. At some point, someone in the institution is going to fail you. Okay. At some point, your social level of identifying as a devotee is going to change or shift. Geography shifts it, relationship shift it, health might shift it. You might not be able to get to do things the way you did. But this attitude of Krishna is my dear friend, and I'm his dear friend and servant. And Krishna is also our servant. He's facilitating our desires all the time. If we said he wasn't our servant, we'd be lying to ourselves. Okay, who else are we so demanding with? I think we're more demanding with Krishna than we are with any other servant that we even ever employ. If you've ever employed anyone, you do not ask them. You are never as demanding with them as we are with Krishna. Okay, it doesn't matter who works for you. I promise you, the way you ask Krishna for stuff is way tougher. We're tougher on him than we are on anybody else. Okay, why don't you do this for me? Isn't it his job? Isn't he supposed to give me everything I want? What happened to being the super soul in every living entity's heart and facilitating every single one of my desires? What's wrong with you? You're not being a good servant. Do you see what the ego is like? But what I'm trying to bring it back to is there's that, it's not just a bridge, but it's an absolute fact that he's always there as our friendly servant, and I'm always there as your friendly servant. And so regardless of the institutional side or the very deep Siddha Swarup side, that part can be engaged in everything, in hearing, in speaking, in understanding, in serving, in suffering.
That's helpful. Yeah, because what I'm hearing is that in a conditioned state, if we identify a devotional service, then we do have a relationship with Krishna.
Absolutely.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a relationship with Krishna, whether we believe it or not. And I find a lot of solace in that as well.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for the answer. If I may just pinch in one thing, that is, I do not think we need to be overly concerned about, I'm a devotee, I have to be on the soul level, and therefore I see no male, I see no female, I see no Indian, I see no African. Srila Prabhupada himself used to say, my Western devotees. My Guru Devi used to say, my African devotees, when we were here in Gita Nagri. These things are said because we live in this material world, and this is how we talk, and we cannot talk otherwise. So, but deep down, we know that we are not these bodies. That is there. Salika Prabhu, please, you may unmute.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Mother CITI-SAKTI, my first question is, Lord Brahma, I knew he performed austerity for 1,000 celestial years to get the darshan of the Lord. So I'm just wondering how many celestial years we have to perform austerity before we have you again to speak on Hare Krishna Africa platform.
So Lord Brahma performed his austerities for 1,000 celestial years, not just to get darshan of the Lord, but also to be empowered to serve him. He wanted his service for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So how long? Well, that's Prabhupada's given us so many different timescales. He said, you follow what I say, and I guarantee you'll go back to Godhead at the end of this life.
No, Mother CITI-SAKTI, please.
No, you're not getting my question.
You're missing something.
That,
oh, maybe I am.
I'm just pulling.
Yeah, you're missing something.
I'm saying that how many celestial years do I have, or do we have to perform austerity before we have CITI-SAKTI come back to speak on Hare Krishna Africa?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's the question.
I'll be back, don't worry. Sahadev Prabhu is really on. He already asking me, can you give us a date and April? I already I'm really sorry.
Okay, that's a real time.
I didn't hear your joke. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much for the beautiful class. It's always enlivening when you speak. It reminds me of Guru Dev, how he is very calculative in his choice of words, and that's one of the unique things that Guru Dev has when he speaks. He may speak for just a few minutes, but when you look at the weight of the words he uses in when he speaks, it carries a whole lot of, and then it keeps people wondering where is it coming from. So I appreciate your class so much. So many words you use, and then I appreciate that. But my question is, and because of your lecture, you mentioned that in asking the Lord for anything, we need to develop the mood of humility. And I'm wondering, how do we ask the Lord with humility? Because my understanding is that for anyone to beg, even to anyone, not to talk of the Lord, there must be some level of humility. So can you expand on that?
Sorry, can you just say the last bit again? For anyone to, because your audio is cutting, because your audio is cutting out a bit.
Yeah, his audio was breaking out, but he was saying that ordinary sense for somebody to beg for something from another person, the beggar will naturally be in a humble condition. So what does it really mean when we are told to seek from the Lord in humility, when by nature, anytime you are asking something from another individual, you're by nature humble. So what does this humility really mean?
To be honest, I don't think everybody's humble when they ask something of another person. It depends on your sense of entitlement. There are plenty of reasons for people who are quite demanding when they ask for something. So I think humility, whoever you're asking, really comes about. See, there's two types of humility. There's almost a mundane sense of humility in recognizing ourselves as inferior. then there's a very deep type of humility, and this is spiritual humility, which actually comes from a place of recognizing we're blessed. I don't have to ask. I know you're going to do it anyway, but I'm going to ask. And in this, because the thing is, there comes a point in everyone's Krishna consciousness, whether it happens within a lifetime, whether it happens after many lifetimes, where we realize, when we genuinely, sincerely realize that in everything we've asked for, not asked for, cooperated with, gone against, when push comes to shove, somehow Krishna's always been there. He's always come through, and he's made sure that he's never left our side or stopped us from feeling his presence somehow or another. It's humbling. That humility of knowing that I already have the wealth of the protection of the most loving and supreme personality of Godhead. It's like the tree that's bowing down by the weight of its fruits. You know, this humility that I'm coming to ask you for something, but I know I don't even need to ask. It's like Sudama was so embarrassed to see Krishna and ask for some help on behalf of his family. He took whatever little he had, but that bag of rice chipped rice was more loaded with like worth 10 million bags of love, which Krishna relished. And so he didn't need to ask him for anything. And, but that asking with humility, there's a level of detachment which comes from a place of trust. There's detachment which is hard-hearted, which is, I don't care what the outcome is. Then it softens a little bit. I don't care what the outcome is, but I'm still all yours. And then there's the thing, I trust what the outcome is, whatever it is, because I'm all yours. So this humility is natural to us. This is so natural to us, which is, you know, it's our constitutional feeling. You look at the gopis, you know, and they're asked, you know, the Lord has a headache. They say, how can we help? We need the dust from your lotus feet. Everybody else said, no, if you take the dust from my lotus feet, I'll go to hell. They said, yes, here, take the dust. They were told, you'll go to hell if you do that. We don't care, as long as he's okay. Because they're that humility that we'll be okay, because he'll look after us no matter what. You know, as long as we don't forget him, as long as he's in our life, it makes no difference. That humility is so natural to us. But we practice humility in order to align our physical, social, psychological with our natural spiritual nature. So the practice is just about realigning. It's like fitting a key into a lock. It's those shapes align. When the shape of the key aligns with the hole in the lock, that's when the magic happens. So as our human nature aligns more with our transcendental nature, as we become more like the residents of the spiritual world, then naturally our hidden and innate qualities will come to the surface. And you know, one thing is that to become like the residents of the spiritual world means that we actually have to put away some of the things that we pursue these days in terms of what the parameters are of healthy expectations and healthy relationships. But one has to be able to be ready to do that. Because remember, human psychology and human society is developed to protect the false ego. Because if it was designed to break the false ego and then there's no higher truth, you'll have a lot of damaged people everywhere, right? But human society and human psychology, when it's dovetailed with actually transcendental psychology, which is to surrender, to unify, and to serve. And when it's nourished when human psychology is nourished by transcendental psychology, when human society is nourished by a transcendental society, then everything becomes perfect, and humility becomes the heartbeat of our community.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's helpful.
Yeah. We have Status Quo. I don't know your name, but I know your name as Status Quo.
It says Srimad Bhagavatam 3. Is that Dharmendra Prabhu? I think he has his
Yeah,
hand up as well.
Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 3, which is not a school. That is Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 3. So that's your
His
name.
name's Dharmendra.
Dharmendra Prabhu. I didn't know your name. So once I saw Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 3, which is status quo. So that's how I was addressing you. Please give me unmute.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
CITI-SAKTI Mataji, nice to see you again. Basically, you were saying something about having a bowl not having a bowl half full. But if for example, like for example yourself going to a seminar, if you are going to a psychiatrist seminar, you have some sort of knowledge, and therefore going with an empty bowl. What I was thinking is that if you get the knowledge that's not right, you've got to be mindful of that. So therefore, if you have some degree of knowledge, it's always useful, because then you know that you're not going to get fooled. And I understand your point of view, but I think there is also that sort of concern that about the submissive listening, which is right, but there's also that element where you could be fooled and you could go down the wrong path.
There's your human psychology kicking in to protect you. Okay, give me one moment. I am just going to get the door, because somebody's come to the door. I'm going to open it and I'll be back with you guys in 2 seconds, okay?
All
I'm
right.
so sorry for this.
Hare Krishna. Very well. Prabhuji, is there a reason why you chose Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 3? If you may share with us. It's very
I actually do a class on a Tuesday and Thursday. I'm sorry to plug in, but it's on the Bhagavatam, basically.
Oh, okay.
Was that your phone a friend, by the way?
What did you say?
I was just saying to Mataji, was that your phone a friend?
Oh, okay. Nice. No, CITI-SAKTI, we cannot hear you.
You're on mute.
No, that was just my daughter
Okay.
came home from school. That's all.
Okay.
Nothing exciting. Okay, so your question was, isn't it important for us to come to something with some knowledge? Let's use the same analogy. Our pre-existing knowledge should be part of the vessel, right? If it's part of the vessel, it's a structure or a framework within which we want to understand what we're receiving. There's still that acceptance there. The bowl can still be empty. When I'm talking about the bowl's half full, it means we're going in with an idea that is one, we're not, it's more an attitude of, I already know what you're going to say. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I already have this idea. And if you say anything contradictory to it, I just won't accept it at all. Yeah. So it's slightly different. Yes, we can have pre-existing knowledge, but make that part of the vessel, not part of the contents.
Yeah, understood that. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That does make sense. And your example is a good one, because there are certain people that have asked questions previously with that preconception and whatever the listener has, whatever the speaker has said in the class, until they've given the answer that they wanted, they just won't take that answer. And it was very good that both speakers gave the same answer on two different lectures. Yeah, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Can I just follow up on one other question? Okay, on that.
Yes.
Do you think after Lord Brahma was listening submissively, do you think he got it right? What he did?
So Srimad Bhagavatam speaks about different Lord Brahmas. So this is one thing to be mindful of. We all hear about pastimes of different Lord Brahmas. Prabhupada says they're not the same Lord Brahma. So our current Lord Brahma is Krishna himself, because there was no one to take that position. So the execution of Brahma's service is perfect. There's no mistakes in it, right? As it says here, the Lord's determination is infallible. Then you have the Brahma who becomes bewildered by Krishna. that Krishna, that Brahma is not the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That Brahma was overcome with pride momentarily to a point where he didn't even recognize who the Supreme Personality of Godhead was when he was standing right in front of him. There's another Lord Brahma whose conditioning means that he gets distracted and has desires for his own daughter, you know? So I think it's asking, did Brahma get it right? Which Brahma? Brahma's a particular post. Many jivas take the post of Lord Brahma. And as Prabhupada says, Brahma is the first birth that every jiva takes when they leave the spiritual world. Because it's the most evolved out of the 8.4 million species of life. So from the position of Lord Brahma, we can fall downwards or we can return back to Godhead. So if we're here, we've all been Brahmas before. Don't know how many heads you had because they all vary, but we've all been Brahma before. And it might, you know, it's interesting that Prabhupada makes us sing Brahma's Govindam prayers every morning, because somewhere in our psyche, we can relate to those prayers because we've all sung them at some point in our existence as Brahma.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for that, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
I don't know if that was the answer you were hoping for, but
Oh, I come in with an empty bowl.
Empty bowl. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Mother, I think, oh, okay. There are some hands up, so I will forgo mine. And then Thakur Murari Prabhu, please, you may unmute.
So, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna.
are you hear me?
Yes, I can
Yes,
hear you.
we can hear you.
Okay, so obeisance to Srila Prabhupada and the Assembly devotees. So thank you for your presentation. And it's always an observation that when the purports are short, the speaker or speakers are, get time to do some additional reflection or research. So you find that it gives you, sometimes it's more nectar in the sense that you don't have a lot of purports to read. So then the speaker, has a chance to do some more research. So thank you for that presentation. Also, in terms of some statements, it seems that some are contextual, in other words, like the interesting one we say women are less intelligent. But then, as you say, if you take it as is, it is stated in a certain time and place, but then it's not true because gopis are the best examples of women. Yes, so I don't, you understand what I'm saying? I'm saying some of the statements sometimes it's contextual. In other words, it is said here now and it means a certain time and place. But if it's said somewhere else, then it will mean something else. So
thank you.
Yes.
That's a very nice reflection, actually, that, what is the value actually of human intelligence? I think there's a past time where Prabhupada went to Mensa. So Mensa is this organization for the most intelligent. You have to have an IQ of 150 at least to get admission and pass all sorts of tests. And he went and he saw they were so preoccupied in human logistics, he actually left early. His disciples were talking about how they were so excited for Prabhupada to go there because they had some idea that, if these people are intelligent in a human way, that they will become devotees. But Prabhupada left early. And they asked him, Prabhupada, how come you left early? These are some of the most intelligent people on the planet. He said their material intelligence is useless when it comes to understanding Krishna. So whether we value human intelligence or not, or are interested in who has more and who has less, ultimately, it's not our human intelligence that really helps us to understand who Krishna is. Just like our human intelligence doesn't mean a lot when it comes to understanding our children, but when it comes to your children, especially when they're very small, it's how much you love them because they're communicating with you based on feelings of safety and care and affection. And Krishna's the same. He doesn't give his heart easily. He gives his heart to somebody who he knows will look after it, not somebody who's going to turn their back again and chase after their own intelligence because their intelligence gets them so many wonderful things here. That's either man or woman. It doesn't matter. It's, there are plenty of extreme, we know this. It's relative. Intelligence is such a relative thing. There's so many different types of intelligence. But yes, your point that the gopis are the ideal Prakriti, the ideal woman, engaged in service. It's not because they necessarily have, you look at the Gopas, they're also ideal Prakriti. They're engaged in service. This is, and actually not just ideal woman and ideal Prakriti, but ideal intelligence. The best intelligence is that which is engaged in the Lord's service. So if you have an IQ of 100 or 101, which is average IQ, or even if it's less than that, you're less than average IQ. If all of it's engaged in the Lord's service, then your IQ and your intelligence is the most glorious, because your intelligence will get you out of this distressing situation and into your own transcendental happiness and into the most loving relationship. But if your high IQ keeps you bound in suffering, what's the point of it?
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mother. Sriman Vara Prabhu, please you may unmute.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
My humble obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Please accept my
All glories to the assembly devotees. So, Mother, you just said something that I would want you to clarify. We learned that Brahma goes back to the spiritual world after his lifespan, and most likely with the resident of Satya Loka, Brahma Loka. Now you're just saying that we've all been Brahmas before. So that sounds to be a bit contradictory, because if we've all been Brahman before, we shouldn't be here by now. We should all gone back. So unless you can give us some reference where Prabhupada said that, if we've all been Brahma before, after our lifespan, we should go back to the spiritual world. We shouldn't be back here.
No, because Brahma's a post. It's not just, so because it's a post, when it's talking about this Brahma went back to Godhead at the end of his life, that doesn't mean every single Brahma goes back to Godhead at the end of his life. There's Brahmas with 4 heads, which is the one we're talking about in other universes, describes in Bhagavatam. There's Brahmas with 100 heads, 50 heads, that they all have different numbers of heads. So they're different personalities. So there's a different jiva in each post of Brahma. And it's down to that jiva, how they use their post or service as Brahma in Krishna's service. Do they get distracted? Do they become, you know, more power hungry from it and then have to take a different birth? So the fact that Prabhupada says there are different Brahmas describes that they have different heads, they're in charge of different planets, means that we're not talking about one particular entity. And when he says one Brahma goes back to Godhead, that doesn't mean they've all gone back to Godhead at the end of their life. And Prabhupada says this himself, that in the post of Brahma, one can either fall down further or they can go back to the spiritual world.
I would really love to have that reference where it is mentioned we've all been Brahmas before, because to the best of my knowledge is that resident of Satya Loka, which is the highest material planet, are already halfway into the spiritual world. Even the best, I mean, these brahmacharis who are very paka, already 50% guaranteed. They will go to Satya Loka, Brahma Loka, and then from there they can go back to the kingdom of God. So what we learn is that Brahma Loka or Satya Loka is the resident of the most advanced souls. Now, falling down from there, I mean, yeah, it's possible, no doubt. But what the scripture really say often is that is like the stepping stone entering into the spiritual world. So if you can just give us the reference where Prabhupada said we've all been Brahmas before and we'll come back here, I would like to see that reference, please.
Yeah, no problem. I can do a Vanipedia search for you and find it, but it's definitely there. I've had it verified many times. Prabhupada has said that every jiva is Brahma first before they become anything else. And even Satyalok, it's only one of the places, right? Actually, really the penultimate place before we go back to Godhead for every person who's looking for pure devotional service is being part of Krishna's roadshow and taking birth in one of his pastimes in one of the universes when he descends, once in a day of Brahma. That's actually really our penultimate step. Satyalok, from what I recall, is the penultimate step to getting Vaikuntha, not Goloka.
Well, Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Shrimad Prabhu, for the question. And Mother CITI-SAKTI, thank you so much for the answer. we have His Grace Navkishore Prabhu intervene to solve this question. Because I had also asked this same question before, and I also read that Lord Brahma is not immune from falling down. And that is what Krishna says, that even from Lord Brahma to the insignificant ant, we are all roaming in this material creation. So I'll put what Navkishore Prabhu quoted on the screen for us to read.
Thank you.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 24, text number 58. It's beautiful. We're all learning, right?
Amazing.
So the Supreme Personality of Godhead acts through his material energy in the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of this cosmic manifestation, just to deliver the loving entity by his compassion and stop the loving entity's birth, death, and duration of materialistic life. Thus, he enables the loving being to return home back to Godhead. So in the purport,
this looks like a different. Is it different?
I don't think so. I think that is what what's the name? Navkishore Prabhu.
Yeah, maybe scroll down then to the section. Maybe it's in a different part.
Yeah, let me see.
There we go.
Yeah.
Both the Lord and the living entity being qualitatively spirit soul. That part.
Yes, whereas the living entities are limited. Thus, the Lord possesses unlimited potency. But there is, let me see if I may go back to the text. Both the Lord, this is confirmed. Okay, all right. I'll read it here. Both the Lord and the loving entity, being qualitatively spirit soul, have the tendency for peaceful enjoyment. But when the part of the Supreme Personality of Godhead unfortunately wants to enjoy independently without Krishna, he is put into the material world, where he begins his life as Brahma and is gradually degraded to the status of an ant or a worm in stool. This is also confirmed by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in his book, Brahmin and Vaishnav, the second chapter. When the loving being first enters the material worlds, he often appears in the form of Lord Brahma. At that time, the loving entity considers himself the king of enjoyers, and being situated in the mode of passion, he takes the position of Brahma and creates progeny. And that is the more reason why Brahma was praying to Krishna that, please remove this pride from me, that I don't consider myself to be the primary creator.
We can also go back up to being Brahma as well.
Please, you did not finish reading now. There is something else down there.
Yes,
Okay,
at the time of dissolution, so this is Bhagavatam 6.1.1. At the time of dissolution, Lord Brahma, along with all the inhabitants of Brahmalok, go directly to the spiritual world. This is confirmed in the Vedas. So yeah, that's what I was saying. They go to Vaikuntha. It doesn't say that they go to Goloka Vrindavan.
No, excuse me.
Okay,
thank you for giving us this information, and thank Navakishore Prabhu for also giving us the reference. Now, the question here is the last statement, which is what I knew before, that at the time of dissolution, Lord Brahma, along with all the inhabitants of Brahmaloka, goes directly to the spiritual world. Now, the fact that they go, Brahma and the residents of Brahmaloka go back to the spiritual world. Now, if every jiva comes here first as Brahma, at the end of his lifespan, it goes back directly to the spiritual world. So at what point he descends again to the body of a worm in the stool? It's a bit incoherent.
No, so this is what I'm trying to
Yeah,
explain.
the
Prabhupada talks about different Brahmas. This is what I'm trying to explain. Prabhupada is talking in the Srimad Bhagavatam, he talks about different Brahmas. This verse about the time of dissolution, Lord Brahma, along with all the inhabitants of Brahmaloka, go directly to the spiritual world. This is confirmed in the Vedas. This is going to talk about one particular Brahma in that particular universe. It doesn't mean that applies for every single Brahma in every single Brahmalok and all the residents of every single Brahmalok. Because remember, if you are just like the king who's self-realized can liberate his citizens, okay? Just like the parent or individual jiva who is a pure devotee, depending on their degree of devotion, they will liberate either 10 generations or 21 generations or 3 or 7, like this. So similarly, if the Lord Brahma of a particular universe is a pure devotee, then of course, those who are the inhabitants of Brahmaloka will also go to the spiritual world along with their master. So it makes sense because both things can stand true, that every jiva takes birth Lord as Brahma, and they can either become a pure devotee, which means them and their dependents can go back to the spiritual world, or they can fall down and become an ant or a worm in stool.
Excuse me, but of course, Mother CITI-SAKTI, we have a WhatsApp platform that you are not on, but I will later share the verse because I have also noted it down, but I can't find it at the moment, where Srila Prabhupada says that in Brahmaloka, even though it is said, like it's quoted here, that at the end of Lord Brahma's life, Lord Brahma and the inhabitants of Brahmaloka, they all go to Vaikuntha. But there are other places also where Srila Prabhupada says that some souls also do fall from Brahmaloka to lower planets. So it all depends on what we as jivas do at every step.
Absolutely.
On our way to going back to Godhead. If we go to Brahmaloka and we become complacent, we do not take up Krishna consciousness, we're not going to go back, we're going to fall. And Krishna will arrange that we fall before Lord Brahma, who had attained perfection and has to go back and therefore has to go with all the other inhabitants do. It's just like sometimes we say, if you chant the holy names of the Lord at the end of your life, you're going to attain Krishna. But Krishna also has a higher plan. If you are not his devotee, he's not going to encourage you or help you to remember. So those who are not devotees of the Lord, even though they may be in Brahmaloka, they do not go back home, back to Godhead. But I will get the quotation.
Please. I think it's really important.
I say it with the emphasis that I have read it several times. Yes.
I think it is important. The reason being is because, this is also similar to like what your point you're making is like when the spiritual master is a pure devotee. Okay. So if he's an Uttamadhikari, surely every single disciple of that pure devotee should go back. But no, because again, like you said, it's down to the individual jiva. The qualification of the spiritual master is a catalyst, but it's not an absolute determinant of where a jiva goes, and same, you can go to Brahmaloka because there's, I think, when Bhaktivedanta Maharaj, he gives a class about Christianity and Krishna consciousness, and he talks about how a lot of Christians end up with on Lord Brahma's planet to develop their God consciousness further. So yeah, this is all very interesting, and I appreciate Sriman Varahaprabhu, scrutinizingly wanting to study scripture. So, seeing we've got these contradictory statements. How do we make sense of the contradiction? But actually, there is actually no contradiction because it's not this or this, it's this and this. Both truths can coexist because we're talking about different personalities and individual free will. If it's okay with you, I'm going to take Hare Krishna Africa's last question. Is that the last question? Is that okay?
Yes, okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Salika,
actually, it's not a question.
Salika, I'll take Salika. Or comment. Yes, whatever it is you want to do.
Yeah, go ahead. Salika Prabhu.
It's frozen.
Thank you. Actually, it's actually not a question. Hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, it's actually not a question.
You are in the tropics, yet you are frozen.
Yeah, sorry. It's actually not a question. I was just going to say that what you were saying, Sadev, in that same very text, Nava Krishna Prabhu quoted, in the second paragraph, the last sentence there, Prabhupada actually said that one can attain that param and place and then fall down from there. If you read that, you can see what Prabhupada again. Or let me see if I can just do that from here.
Okay, I've seen it.
Yeah.
Let me put it up here. It's very
Yeah, put
good.
it up because it's
Yeah.
clearly stated in that same verse.
Yes, Sri Prabhupada stated it here. And I've highlighted both the Lord and the loving entity, being qualitatively spirit soul, have the tendency for peaceful enjoyment. But when the part of the Supreme Personality of Godhead unfortunately wants to enjoy independently without Krishna, he is put into the material world where he begins his life as Brahma and is gradually degraded to the status of an ant or a worm.
Then go down a little bit.
This is called Manaha Shastandrani Prakritishtani Karashati. Okay.
Yeah. At the end of that paragraph, Prabhupada re-emphasized the same statement. Yeah.
Even having attained that Param Padam, having merged into the impersonal Brahman, he falls again to the material world.
Yeah.
No, I think it's lower. Was that it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was that. Okay.
Well, I think, well, Sarika, yes. But I think the most important and supportive statement in this purport is that Lord Brahma, if he does not continue with his devotional service, gradually degrades himself to the status of an ant or a worm in a stool. Yeah. I hope, Madhuvan, you're not asking a question because our speaker had asked to leave, but...
Just a little comment, just a little bit.
All right, go ahead. Please, go ahead.
Okay. My comment is that we shouldn't be so ambitious about going to heaven, because in heaven, just like it was stated that we first of all start as Lord Brahma, that will fire our egos, put us in a mode of passion. So that's why that's why we are always very proud. We are full of ego, and it was explained that Abramama Bhuvana Loka, even up to the highest planet, it's a place of mystery where you say birth and death takes place. So even denizens of heaven, they are envious of people on this planet because the enjoyment and the suffering, is average. So there's no big deal going to heaven. You can even fire up your ego or your mode of passion. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Madhuvan Prabhu, for sharing your opinion. And of course, it's Shastric, so it's not just mundane opinion. It's very interesting how we earthly beings understand opinion, and we hear Krishna speak like, Arjuna, this is my opinion. Take it or leave it. Well, CITI-SAKTI.
Mother is going, but like I've wanted to know why, of all the heaven planets, the Christians ultimately be elevated to Brahma Loka. There are many heaven planets. So why are the Christians will be promoted to Brahma Loka, but not other planets?
That I could tell you. My understanding from the little that I know is, and Maharaj didn't say all of them. He said some. My understanding is based on some of their, and you guys probably know this better than I do, some of the philosophy and theology around God as the creator has a lot of parallels with Lord Brahma's creation. And that may be one of the reasons, actually, although they don't necessarily realize they're worshipping Lord Brahma, the creator, that may be something. But I don't know enough of the esoteric and intricate details of Christianity and their understanding of creation and the creator to be able to comment on that. I simply know what my spiritual master, what I heard from him, and that's it. You know, I really appreciate the community of the Africa classes, because there is this culture of asking lots of questions, going deep, looking at the contradictions, looking at things from a broad perspective, but at the same time saying, yeah, but at the end of the day, you know, let's keep Krishna consciousness simple, you know, because it is very simple. And and you know, everybody's got different appetites for discussions around different philosophical aspects, but yeah, I appreciate the way you still keep very focused on what the core things are. So thank you so much. It has been wonderful to be back, and hopefully I'll see you soon.
Yes, thank you so much, Mother CITI-SAKTI, and all the devotees with your questions and your presence. But before you go, Mother CITI-SAKTI, the question Govinda Prabhu just asked, I very, very clearly remember when Gurudev said that those who are Christians today and are very serious, and when they attain perfection, they go to Brahmaloka because their spiritual master came from Brahmaloka. Lord Jesus Christ came from Brahmaloka. And so he says that he's going back, and at the end, just like Srimad Varaha Prabhu said, at the end, we all will go to the Father. That is also clearly said in the Bible. But I had a tape where Gurudev said that Lord Jesus Christ came from Brahmaloka. So thank you so much. Devotees, we're going to humbly request you all to kindly unmute, and we all chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra to express our appreciation to our revered speaker, Her Grace CITI-SAKTI Devi. Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare
Rama, Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Rama
Rama,
Hare
Rama, Hare. Chakapatari Vyasta Kripa Sindhu Vyasta Patitanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavyo Namo
Her
Namaha.
Grace CITI-SAKTI Devi Dasi ki
Jai. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Swami Maharaj ki Jai.
Jai. Lord